Hello students, today we are going to talk about another topic of the chapter Biomolecules, which is primary and secondary metabolites. Okay, now coming to primary and secondary metabolites. Children, there are so many organic compounds, biomolecules, which are constantly utilized in various metabolic processes occurring in the cell. Metabolic process, life-sustaining process, right? We all know about the metabolic processes. So the biomolecules found in living cell can be called as metabolites, right? Children, there are two categories of metabolites: primary metabolites and secondary metabolites. In animal tissues, all the categories of organic compound are present. These are termed as primary metabolites. Primary metabolites are those which have identifiable functions and play a specific role in the normal physiological process. Like for example, amino acids, nitrogen base, proteins, nucleic acids, like all these are primary metabolites because their function are easily identifiable. They play a specific role in the normal physiological processes. Okay. On the other hand, if we analyze plant, fungal and microbial cell, we would see thousands of compounds other than the primary metabolite. All those compounds are known as secondary metabolites. Actually, children, secondary metabolites are product of certain metabolic pathway. Right? Talking about their functions, so the function of secondary metabolite is in the host organism are not yet understood. But many of them are useful to mankind, like they produce rubber, they produce drugs, spices, scents, pigments, other products which are very useful for human beings, right? So these are secondary metabolite and some of them have the ecological importance too. Now let us talk biomacromolecules. Now children, the most important macromolecules present in the cell are polysaccharide, proteins and nucleic acid. As you know, we studied earlier, they have a high molecular weight in the range 10,000 Dalton and above. They are usually found in insoluble fraction. They are actually polymers of biomolecules. Polysaccharides like polysaccharide are polymer of monosaccharides. Proteins are polymer of amino acids. Nucleic acid are polymer of nucleotide. Children, polymers are of two types: homopolymer and heteropolymer. Homopolymer is a polymer of only one type of monomer repeating n number of times, like a starch. होमोपॉलीमर क्या होता है? होमो मीन्स सेम, तो वो पॉलीमर जिसकी मोनोमेरिक यूनिट सारी एक सी है, तो वो कहलाता है होमोपॉलीमर. लेट अस सपोज A plus A plus A equals to 3A, तो ये आपका है होमोपॉलीमर. Second category is heteropolymer. Heteropolymer is a polymer of two or more type of monomeric unit, like protein. इसे तकरीबन 20 तरीके के अमाइनो एसिड्स होते हैं और उनसे मिलकर के बनता है प्रोटीन. तो प्रोटीन क्या है? एक हेटेरोपॉलीमर है, जैसे कि A plus B plus C plus C plus D. तो ये बहुत सारी मोनोमेरिक यूनिट से मिलकर बना है और ये सारी मोनोमेरिक यूनिट कैसी हैं? अलग अलग, डिफरेंट टाइप की. हेटेरो मीन्स क्या होता है? डिफरेंट. तो हेटेरोपॉलीमर आर दोज पॉलीमर विच हैव टू और मोर देन टू टाइप ऑफ मोनोमेरिक यूनिट, और होमोपॉलीमर आर दोज विच हैव ओनली वन टाइप ऑफ मोनोमर, राइट? Now children, let us begin with the proteins. Children, the word protein comes from the Greek word, and the Greek word is proteos. Right? Proteos means prime important. Proteos का मतलब क्या है? Proteos एक Greek word है जिसका मतलब है prime important. So they are prime important compound for a body. They are most abundant biomolecule of living system. Talking about the sources of protein, so for example milk, then we have cheese, then we have pulses, fish, meat. So children, these are the sources of protein. All these are chief source of protein. Talking about the protein, so protein are polypeptide. They are linear chain of amino acids which are linked by peptide bond. एक linear chain होती है amino acid की जो आपस में peptide bond से bound रहती है. These peptide bonds are formed between the carboxyl group and amino group of the successive amino acid. That thing we have discussed, right? दो successive amino acid के बीच में होने वाली जो bonding होती है, that is basically like एक amino acid का amino group और दूसरे amino acid का carboxyl group. इन दोनों के बीच में होने वाली जो बॉन्डिंग होती है वो कहलाती है पेप्टाइड बॉन्ड. Got it? And because of 20 type of amino acids are there, therefore protein are heteropolymer, right? Children, the enormous or various type of proteins results from the 20 amino acids. And depending on the number of amino acid residue and the sequence of amino acids, right? And collagen is the most abundant protein in the animal world, and ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate carboxylase oxygenase, that is known as rubisco, right? It is the most abundant protein in the biosphere, right? Now let us look at the functions of protein. Children, the protein have a number of functions. Like the first important function is the structural component, as many proteins serve as building material of cells and tissues. Thus they are called structural protein. They are essential for growth, repair and reproduction, right? So in that way they are play a structural component as the structural component. जैसे कि इसमें पहला एग्जाम्पल हम लेंगे एक सेल ऑर्गेनल, such as membrane, ribosome, mitochondria, plastid, microfilament, microtubule and chromosomes, right? और उसके साथ ही साथ wall of pollen grain, they also contain protein. तो प्रोटीन जो है स्ट्रक्चरल कंपोनेंट है क्योंकि ये सेल ऑर्गेनल को बनाने में भी हेल्पफुल है. टिश्यू, matrix of connective tissue, like you have studied just now in the earlier chapter, that matrix of connective tissue is also made up of by protein. Cartilage contain protein, that is known as chondrin. So in that way, it work as the important component in the formation of tissue also. Protective covering, children, like such as the horny scale which is present in the layer of skin. एक्सोस्केलेटन स्ट्रक्चर जैसे कि स्केल्स हैं, फेदर्स हैं, वूल है, नेल है, क्लो है, हूफ्स है, हॉर्न्स हैं, दे ऑल आर मेड अप ऑफ बाय प्रोटीन. केराटिन सल्फेट के बने होते हैं. तो प्रोटीन जो है प्रोटेक्टिव कवरिंग बनाने में भी सपोर्ट करता है. तो सेल ऑर्गेनल बनते हैं, टिश्यूज़ बनते हैं, प्रोटेक्टिव कवरिंग्स बनती है. सो इन दैट वे कहीं ना कहीं कहाँ पे हेल्प कर रहा है, स्ट्रक्चरल कंपोनेंट की तरह काम कर रहा है. Now the second important function is the metabolic regulation. Children, certain protein forms enzymes, coenzymes and hormones. So basically they help in to regulate the metabolic activities. The third important function is as the fuel. The protein may act as the fuel to supply energy. When glucose or fat are in short supply, so protein helps to supply energy and act as the fuel. The next important purpose is the transport. Children, some of the proteins serve as the carrier, जैसे कि प्रोटीन ग्लोब्यूलिन जो कैरी करता है पिगमेंट. पिगमेंट कौन सा? हीम पिगमेंट, right? So these are some of the functions which are performed by protein. Now let us talk about the structure of protein. So children, biologists describe the protein structure at 4 levels. What are those 4 levels? Primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary. Now let us look at the primary structure. Children, the linear sequence of amino acid unit in a polypeptide chain is called a primary, 1 degree structure of the protein molecule, just as shown in the picture. All these amino acids are arranged in a linear pattern, in the very simple pattern. So linear sequence of amino acid forms the polypeptide, forms the protein. That protein is known as primary level of protein. Talking about the secondary structure, so a polypeptide chain coiled into a regular spiral, that is known as alpha helix, just as shown in this figure, right? So 2-3 helix bind together by the hydrogen bond and form beta pleated sheet. तो इस तरीके से अल्फा हेलिक्स की एक रैंडम कॉइल होती है और बीटा प्लेटेड शीट्स बनाती है. सो इन दैट वे दैट coiled structure is known as secondary structure of protein. So basically the thread of primary protein is folded in the form of alpha helix, and the alpha helix is established by the hydrogen bond between the oxygen of carboxyl group and the amino acid residue, and of the fourth amino acid residue जैसे कि केराटिन. तो इनके बीच में बीटा प्लेटेड स्ट्रक्चर बनता है, बीटा प्लेटेड शीट्स बनती हैं. सो दैट coiled structure is known as secondary level of protein. Next is the tertiary structure of protein. Now those helical polypeptide molecule may fold on itself and assume a complex but a specific structure, right, like this. So these geometrical shapes are known as tertiary level structure, right, of the protein. So the tertiary structure is maintained by the weak bond such as the hydrogen, ionic, disulfide or hydrophilic or hydrophobic bonds, right? So these structure are the tertiary level of the protein. Talking about the quaternary structure, so children, certain protein consist of bundle of 2 or more polypeptide chain. इतने कॉम्प्लिकेटेड होते हैं कि 2 या 2 से ज़्यादा पॉलीपेप्टाइड चेन उसमें प्रेजेंट रहती है, राइट? एक तरीके से हम ये कह सकते हैं कि क्वाटरनरी स्ट्रक्चर में प्राइमरी प्रोटीन, सेकेंडरी प्रोटीन और टर्शियरी प्रोटीन, राइट? ईच काइंड ऑफ प्रोटीन दे हैव. तो सच प्रोटीन हैव अ क्वाटरनरी स्ट्रक्चर. जैसे कि collagen has 3 helical polypeptide. Talking about hemoglobin, they have 4 helical polypeptide chain, right? Okay, and each individual polypeptide chain protein are called quaternary protein, right? So this is about the structure of proteins. Now talking about the types of proteins. So children, proteins are classified on the base of shape, chemical and composition and function. So depending upon these criteria protein are classified. Accordingly, on the basis of shape, proteins are of 2 types, fibrous protein and globular protein. Fibrous protein have a spiral secondary polypeptide chain wound around each other in order to form fiber, and they are basically insoluble in water. Talking about globular protein, so they are rounded in shape and generally soluble in water, right? So examples are given there. So children, this is about the protein In our next video, we will talk about the polysaccharides. So now your task is to revise and learn today's topic. So very soon we will meet again and we will discuss further topics of this chapter. Till then, have a nice day and thank you.